Pod. Welcome back to another episode of Say Who Say Pod. He's Danny O'Neil. I've been corrected that's not actually a sports coat. It's more of a so maybe that's a sports coat, but usually it's a suit jacket.
No.
They're all sports coats.
I don't think I've worn a suit jacket when we've been doing this. I think I've only worn sports coats.
Okay. Fair enough.
It's possible there was one day that I was wearing a suit jacket, but I was not wearing it with the pants. I've always understood that the difference is the suit jacket, it's matching suit and pants, and the sports jacket is when it's just the jacket.
Okay. Well, after further review, the call stands. He's Danny O'Neil in a sports coat. I'm Christian Caple. I'm going to find out here in a minute whether Danny voted in my Twitter poll the other day, and if he did, how he did. And if he didn't,
did not vote in it.
You can cast it live then, or semi-live. Before we do, of course, it's our privilege to let you know that today's episode of Say Who Say Pod is brought to you by our good friends at Chuck Olson Kia in Shoreline, with a friendly, low-pressure sales staff and a competitively priced selection of vehicles. We hope you'll make Chuck Olson Kia your next destination for all of your vehicle buying needs. They're family-owned by a family of University of Washington graduates. They're locally owned and operated since 1964. If you do, check out Chuck Olson Kia. Ask for our guy Henry Olson, and if you talk to Henry, let him know that Say Who Say Pod sent you.
I've been working on potential sales pitches for Chuck Olson Kia, and one of them was everything you want in a car dealer and nothing that you want in a defensive line, in that they are friendly, low pressure.
There you go. PFF will not detect them.
Henry, you can use that if you'd like. Friendly, low pressure. That's not how we like our defenses. That's how we like our cars.
Thanks to our friends at Chuck Olson Kia. I asked shortly after the game, maybe not long enough after the game for emotions to subside, but long enough, I think. Whether based solely on Saturday's result, Washington's 24-6 loss to Ohio State, they're 3-1 now. Based solely on that result, do you feel better, worse, or the same about how the rest of Washington's season will play out?
Oh, I would definitely say better. I came away from that feeling good. And mostly it was, hey, look, that was a clear improvement on how they played against top 10 teams last year. Like, that's just baseline. That was better. Now, it was at home, which helps. I don't think Ohio State was all that aggressive offensively, especially in the first half. But look, you stopped them on 4th and 1. You moved the ball, though had terrible results in the red zone. You're competitive. That was a better showing than they had against Penn State or Oregon last year.
So I agree. You said a couple things there that I think are worth exploring. Did this feel like a load management game for Ohio State? Not in terms of personnel. Obviously, they played all their guys. That not that way. But I've seen and read a lot from Ohio State media about how Ryan Day kind of shifted game strategy last year to account for a long season, a long playoff run, and that maybe they call games in a way where it's like, if we can win with 6 possessions, let's win with 6 possessions, and not, if we can win running 62 plays, let's not try to run 90.
If that's happening, that's really silly on their part. I would say, here's when you said load management, this is what I thought you would mean. They didn't want too much on their quarterback's shoulders. I think they looked at it and said, what's the clearest path toward us getting beat in this game? And it's getting our young quarterback rattled on the road in that stadium and having to throw to get back into the game. And we're going to avoid that from happening by not having him throw much downfield in the first half. And we're going to make them put us in a hole. And that didn't happen. That's kind of what I saw in the first half.
I can't remember the last game at Husky Stadium that featured so few throws downfield by either team. And it is a little bit difficult to know like whether Ohio State was perfectly content with that, whether Washington dictated some of that by its coverage. You saw a lot of 3 safety looks, like you pointed out during the game. Rylan Dillard-Allen played a ton. Mikel Esteen and Alex McLaughlin played every snap, and then you also had Dillard-Allen out there for like 43 or 46 snaps out of 62. So played the majority of the game with 3 safeties. Jed Fish said that was partially due to personnel, like Rashawn Clark was out for this game, so you really only had one true nickel available, Leroy Bryant, who did play, but also wanted to give Julian Sayin a little bit something different to look at that they hadn't put on film really. So, I talked about keeping a roof on the defense, right? And I think they did that. This was like I talked about leading up to the game, whenever asked in like these interviews with Ohio State media and stuff, hey, what does Washington have to do? What does a Washington upset look like? And one of the things that came to mind was like, you force Ohio State to drive the length of the field. You force them to finish drives. You don't let them get the ball in Jeremiah Smith's hands and suddenly it's a 68-yard touchdown. And they did that really well, except for the one big gamble that they rolled the dice on the all-up pressure there. And
7 dudes.
So what Jed Fish and Ryan Walters have said is that, like, hey, we knew we'd have a free runner there. We had a free runner there. They had the perfect call. Middle screen, Jeremiah Smith, nobody's there, untouched for the score. Walters kind of said, maybe in hindsight, we'd have gone with something different there. I didn't quite get the risk versus reward. I think if you get home, okay, so now it's a 44-yard field goal instead of like 37 or whatever. They had not been pushing the ball on you. Julian Sayin's really just throwing short, intermediate stuff. It's 3rd and 11. They've just had a false start. I mean, that play was peak crowd noise for this entire football game. Washington was leading 3-0. They just forced, whether it was crowd noise or not, when you never really know, but they just forced a false start. And so you know what that does to the crowd. They just get louder. It's 3rd and 11. They can sense, hey, we're going to get off the field here without a touchdown. It's going to be tied at halftime. And it just, the gamble there felt a little out of place for what their defensive game plan was otherwise.
I agree with that. I can see their rationale, which was, okay, they've just had to bump up, go from gaining 6 yards to now we've got to gain 11 yards. This is the most likely point we've had to have them drop back, and let's hit the quarterback with pressure. And look, you had Mikel Esteen was a free runner, and he when he saw Sayin was going to throw, he jumped up to make that throw tough. It just, like you said, it was a crosser, and Esteen did not affect where the ball. He was not in the path at all. It was a risk, and I would say what you said. The risk reward of both that and the fake field goal seemed out of place to me. It seemed that the upside there on both plays didn't merit what you were giving up, which was, if you just keep playing defense the way you've been playing defense, you're going to force them to a field goal. And if you just take the field goal, you're keeping it within a one-possession game, no matter what happens on Ohio State's opening possession in the second half. I didn't think the risks merited I didn't think the upside merited the risks they were taking.
I'd like to congratulate the 2014 fake punt against Stanford for moving down to second place on the list of worst special teams calls I've seen at Husky Stadium.
I still remember that dumbass fake punt.
I think there was speculation about that at the time, that like someone on the field was supposed to call that off. And maybe this is a good point to make, that like someone on the field, it was probably somebody's responsibility to call that off based on the alignment, and it didn't get called off. And Chris Peterson did not say that after the game. What Chris Peterson said after the game was, it was a bad call. Shouldn't have done that. That's on me. That was not the explanation from the head coach after this failed fake field goal on 4th and 14. Heard some analysis from Hugh Millen of this one on KJR.
What did Hughes say? I miss Hughes' analysis.
Not to step on their ratings or anything, but to summarize, he felt that would have been an extreme gamble. That play call would have been an extreme gamble on 4th and 4.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And that on 4th and 14, nothing about what Ohio State had shown on film or showed them in that play said to run that play. And he did not like at all, Danny, that Jed Fish did not own up to it being a bad call afterward, and that he used the word execution in his explanation. He did not like that.
I would generally concur with Hugh on both counts. I think when you make a call for a fake and you leave it up to college players to recognize something in the formation to call it off, you need to accept responsibility. Like, don't say that. You made the call. And if it didn't get called off because somebody didn't see it, well, that's part of the risk you took in making the call. For the second consecutive week, I'm going to make a Heat reference. Last week, it was, you could get killed walking your doggy. This week, it is Neil McCauley, Robert De Niro's character, when he is talking to Neil, or talking to Vincent, Al Pacino's character. They're in the diner. And he says, do I look like I'm sticking up liquor stores with a Born to Lose tattoo on my chest?
Yes.
That fake field goal was sticking up a liquor store with a Born to Lose tattoo on your chest. Fake field goal on 4th and 14 against Ohio State is some, I mean, look, I like aggressiveness. That was crazy. That was crazy.
It was covered as covered can be, too.
If it was a pass, if it was a run.
I'll say this.
And then there's part of it. Look, Grady Gross is kicking the hell out of the ball. Like, he booted the...
Also true.
There's nothing about watching that man run that makes me think he's going to get 14 yards.
I'll say this. Some zip on that ball from Grady.
It was not a bad pass.
It was a toss.
Just so happened the tight end was fully engaged blocking when it was released.
And double covered and well short of the sticks. But you say, other than that, so part of me is like, are we being too nitpicky of the risks when any of us would say, like, asked before the game, hey, do you think Washington has to take some risks to win a game like this? I think any of us would probably say, yes, they do. Mm-hmm. So, like, are we being too nitpicky about the risk that they did take?
Maybe a little bit. However, there's a lot of different ways that you can take risks. I don't know how much upside was on either of those risks. And certainly the upside on the fake field goal. I'm like, there's a lot of ways to take risks. I did not think the fake field goal specifically was a poorly advised one. Like, that was what are the percentage chances? Like, what was the thought process of how that was going to work if it did? Because it didn't. I mean, from the alignment, there just wasn't anything about how it looked that made you think that there was a world in the multiverse where that could have ever succeeded.
They must have been thinking it would be a touchdown when they called it. Because if you're just thinking, oh, we can get 14 and keep the chains moving against the best red zone defense in the country, maybe the best overall defense in the country, like, that's not worth it. Oh, maybe we can keep the chains moving for a chance to score a touchdown rather than take the 3. Even if you get 14 yards and move the sticks, if it's not a touchdown on the fake, like, it's still on the table that you're only going to come away from that drive with 3. So
that is the big challenge with a fake field goal, and why really you should only call them if you think it's going to score a touchdown.
In the moment, I understand, like, the 3 felt like a loss. Just like, I mean, not as much as the first field goal. Like, when they settled for 3 on the first red zone trip, I thought that's probably the game right there. You cannot have 1st and goal at the 3-yard line, at the 2-yard line against Ohio State and come away with 3 points. You just cannot. You're just not going to win the game doing that. So a second one where it's like, gosh, you really feel like you've moved the ball well, and all you're going to have to show for it is 6 points that can be wiped out with, like, one throw to Jeremiah Smith or Carnell Tate. It's frustrating. I get it. But hey, you settle for 3, you go, even if you give up that tough kind of backbreaking touchdown at the end of the half, you're down 1. And then when they score a touchdown to open the second half after a roughing the passer penalty, you're still down one score. It's a one-score game.
Yeah. All of that is very, very fair. They didn't lose the game because of those decisions, and I'm not convinced they would have won the game even if both of those decisions played out as Washington had hoped. And this is probably the point where I'm a little reluctant to say, like, wow, Washington's defense really acquitted itself well. Even though I think holding Ohio State to 24 points and the way that they played in the first half and getting a stop on 4th and 1, those were all like huge and significant things, is because once they did start throwing the ball to their wide receivers, there wasn't much Washington could do to stop that.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm not sure, even if those worked out as perfectly as had been hoped for, if Washington ends up winning that game, because it did feel like once Ohio State started pushing the ball, there wasn't much resistance from Washington.
I do have a hard time with the they held them to 24 narrative.
Yeah.
6 full possessions for Ohio State in this game, 4 scores, 3 of them touchdowns, 1 punt and 1 turnover on downs because they couldn't get 1 yard at Washington's 5-yard line. So, and hey, credit to the defense, right? Like, there's a reason that you put 11 guys out there. 4th and 1 is not guaranteed. But if Washington's going to come away from this game lamenting what could have been, you also got to point out that, like, Ohio State surely feels like it should have scored a touchdown on its first possession. And it was a short field and all those things. But I mostly agree that you feel better about Washington's chances of competing against, like, Michigan and Oregon and Illinois based on this result, based on the way they competed, based on the fact it was a 1-score game going into the 4th quarter, all those things. What I think this game does to temper that, though, is the injuries are stacking up.
Yeah.
And they're stacking up at key positions. Not
tough spots,
the most important, but pretty darn close to the most important. Carver, Willis, like, we'll see what his availability is long term. He came out with a knee injury. I'm sure everybody saw on TV what happened there. Got a guy came into his legs from behind. Didn't get, like, stuck. It looked like it took him out clean, which is better than kind of getting rolled up. But he was out of uniform in the second half. I saw him walking afterward. No brace or crutches or anything like that, but did look to be limping a little bit. So you're talking about probably Max McCree taking over at left tackle. And then the one where I do think there's some long-term consideration is Zach Durfee, who's out with an elbow injury. Jed Fish has not given an update on him, but when an update comes, I'm not expecting it to be that he's day-to-day. I think they're probably looking at not having him for a while. So that's killer. I mean, it's a bummer for him. We all know what the injury history has been like for him, and that's a tough blow to lose him 10 snaps or whatever into your biggest game of the year. And that is not a position that is teeming with depth. Like, I think Jacob Lane is off to a great start this year. He leads the team in tackles for loss and sacks, and he's going to be coming off the field even less than he already was. And it's really going to be Isaiah Ward and Deshaun Lynch at that other spot. Deshaun Lynch played 41 snaps against Ohio State when Zach Durfee went down. So on the whole, you're talking about your top linebacker, Buda Alukta, is out for the season, although you got Jacob Manu back. So
yep. And
I don't
Manu
know if that's
looks good.
Yeah, and he did. And I think he's going to play more and more. But Jed Fish kind of talked on Monday about how maybe it's not a foregone conclusion that he's definitely going to play in every game the rest of the way, because, like, they're trying to manage maybe a red shirt situation, and they want to get some clarity from the NCAA on 5 to play 5 rule changes and all that. So maybe that's a week by week proposition. But I'm sure Alukta's injury factors into it. Even so, that's probably not quite 1-for-1, like a guy playing his very first football after tearing his ACL a year ago. But certainly very encouraging to get him back. And obviously they felt good enough about him to start him in his very first game cleared. So your number one linebacker, your not number one edge rusher in terms of productivity, but in terms of, like, potential and the way they feel about him, your top edge rusher, a starting edge rusher, a starting defensive lineman. We now know that Tacario Davis is dealing with a rib injury, so that's not necessarily like okay, give him a week and he'll be healed and let's go. It sounds like it's kind of a pain management / like, can he protect himself while tackling thing? The fact that they had a week off and the Apple Cup and such a huge matchup against Ohio State and like he still couldn't go tells me that like that must be a tricky one. So Jed Fish said the way he's moving makes him optimistic he can play at Maryland, but it's going to be up to the doctors.
Now, on the upside there, Robinson looks like a player.
He does.
And he's a big dude. I wondered about that. Having a true freshman out there, like he did not look over his head playing against the best wide receivers in the country. If of all of the different positives that I would take from the game, Desmond Roebuck, Robinson, and then Dillard Allen were the three of like those guys look like studs.
So we've known about John Mills and Raiden Vinesbright and Ryland Dillard Allen. Those were January enrollees who were here for spring practices. Desmond Roebuck and Dylan Robinson got here in June.
Yep.
I mean, those guys were part of the small handful anymore of true freshmen who are on the traditional like graduate from high school.
Actually had senior years, enjoyed the final semester of their senior year of high school.
Like go to prom and do senior skip day, high school careers, like on the what used to be the normal trajectory. And both just immediately in training camp were like, oh yeah, these are going to be guys. And now you probably hoped that you wouldn't see Dylan Robinson in the starting lineup this year because corner was so solidified. And if he's starting, it means something happened to one of those guys, but that's football. Desmond Roebuck, first of all, a couple of great throws by Damon Williams Jr., attacking the seams, not just to him, but Amari Evans also, but a really great catch by Roebuck on the first one, at least. So I agree. Those are positive developments. I think before Dylan Robinson even enrolled, I think you kind of knew he was going to be a day one starting corner as a sophomore, just based on the way that the roster shakes out and what his potential is. We got to talk to him yesterday for the first time, actually. Sharp guy. Him and John Mills. You would not guess that John Mills is 17 years old, based on his appearance and also based on the way he answers questions and handles the media. He's a pretty mature guy. Offensively, too, though. You're now missing, perhaps, we don't know for sure, but your starting left tackle and your number 2 receiver, Rashid Williams. And it's kind of getting to be a lot 4 games into the season. Like if you were to identify, okay, outside of Damon Williams Jr., Jonah Coleman, and Denzel Boston, like who can this team least afford to lose? I think Alex McLaughlin moved pretty quickly to the top of that list. Yep. But after him, I mean, you'd have Durfee, Carver, Willis. I mean, just to kind of put it in context, my 22 most important players list for 2025 had all of those guys. I had Rashid Williams 16th. I had Buda Alukta 13th. I had Carver Willis 3rd. I had Zach Durfee 4th. I had Tacario Davis 8th. Those are some really crucial players that they're going to have to go try to play without. Some of them for longer than others, but I just, I don't know. I feel like those injuries happen and the temptation is to evaluate how they competed against Ohio State in a vacuum. And you almost kind of forget about just how crucial those injuries could be going forward. So I don't want to underrate that. I think that's a big deal.
There's certainly the possibility that it changes the trajectory of the season. And I think you're right to differentiate what you saw on the field, how they looked in that game, and what it means going forward, because those are two different things, and injuries really profoundly impact the latter. I think that the impact of injuries, I always believe, comes down to what is the difference between, it's not how good is that player, or just how good is that player. What's the difference between he and the next guy? What's the drop off there? In my mind, the most important one here is Carver Willis. And you saw Maximus McCree get on the field. And that's going to be the question of, is is he able to be not a liability as a left tackle? Not saying they're gonna if Carver Willis misses time, they're gonna miss that. But is he going to allow them to be functional still? And I certainly am more optimistic about the ability to withstand injuries this year than a year ago. And there's also, this is where some of the schedule comes in as well. What does it look like here in the short term for Washington? I think Maryland's the most important game for their season. And nobody would have guessed that at the beginning of the year, in large part because Maryland won 4 games last season. But Maryland's undefeated. If people haven't been paying attention, Maryland has one of the best freshmen in the country. Their quarterback, Malik Washington, looks awesome. He is one of the best freshman backs in the country. And Maryland is absolutely believing. I think before last season, they'd won 8 games each of the previous couple of years. Maryland is expecting to win this game, absolutely expecting this to be a game where they make an announcement about them being a team that is better than just mid-table in the Big Ten. And for Washington, it's really hard for me to believe that they're going to finish better than they did a year ago if they don't win this game. And so then it becomes a short-term management. If you don't have Carver Willis, if you don't have Takario Davis, and he's not back yet, if Jacob Manu is not up to a full sort of workload yet, and you don't have Alukta, what is that going to look like? Because the ability to weather those losses in the short term becomes hugely significant.
All Maryland has done defensively is sack the quarterback and take the ball away.
Yep.
I mean, they're top 10 nationally in a ton of defensive metrics so far. As you noted, the schedule strength has not been phenomenal. Florida Atlantic,
No.
Northern Illinois, Towson, and Wisconsin. And you decide for yourself where Wisconsin even fits in that pecking order.
But they beat up Wisconsin. I mean,
they did.
I watched that game. They beat up Wisconsin.
These are not offensively gifted programs they've faced, but it's Maryland, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you came into the season thinking Maryland was going to be a pushover, no matter what the competition is, this is not how you probably like anticipated their defense performing in particular. And Malik Washington is a dude. He is a dude. Just watching the highlights of his performance against Florida Atlantic, threw 3 touchdown passes, calm, poised. I don't think he dealt with a ton of pressure in that game, but good decision maker. You know, Mike Loxley, their head coach, talked about him, how like he doesn't make the same mistake twice. He's really good at adjusting on the fly, like mid-game. Ryan Walters, talking about him on Tuesday, said, you know, just in terms of like stature, like he kind of looks like Cam Newton out there. He's huge, right? They don't use him as a runner really at all. Very little, the way that Cam Newton did in college and in the pros, but like you could see him abusing a defense in short yardage situations with his 6'5" and 220, 230.
Yeah, it's funny. The comparison that I thought of was Ben Roethlisberger, in that he is a big dude and he's hard to freaking tackle in the pocket. Like Ben Roethlisberger, for years, you just saw all these people slide off his big ass because they weren't able to bring him down. I really like Michigan's quarterback, Underwood. And I think Maryland's QB, I think Malik Washington is a better quarterback right now than he is. And I really like Michigan's dude.
Yeah, so this game reminds me a little of Washington Rutgers a year ago.
It's a good comparison.
Long trip, East Coast. I think 2025 Maryland is better than 2024 Rutgers. And I think we all know by now that 2025 Washington is better than 2024 Washington. It's the kind of game that I think is going to be decided in the margins. I think preseason, and maybe even like during the first couple weeks of the season, watching how good Washington's offense looked, you could have looked at this game and said, this is an opportunity, a rare opportunity to win a Big Ten road game by multiple scores. It's Maryland. Look at what they're coming off of. Any win in this game, any kind of win in this game, is a phenomenal win for Washington. Yep. This is suddenly a tremendous challenge, going across the country to play a road game against a team that's unbeaten, feeling really good about itself, with a talented quarterback coming off a bye. Like, add all that up, take the logos off the helmet. Any win in this game is a huge, huge win for Washington, with the injuries adding up, with, you're not susceptible to a letdown game in the traditional sense of like, you got a big win and now you're playing a bad team, because you didn't get a win at all and you're not playing a bad team, but you did just get so up, I think, emotionally to play a big game against Ohio State in a big time atmosphere. You didn't get the result, so it's not like you're riding high, but now you got to turn right around. They're traveling on Thursday, go across the country and play a team that's had 2 weeks to prepare for you. I think Julian Saint's good. Like, I think he's got a nice poise about him too. He plays within himself. He plays within that system. He does what they ask him to do. That throw he made to Max Clare, the tight end, on the sideline, moving left to right, I believe. Like, he does some impressive stuff with the football. I think Malik Washington is going to be a bigger problem for Washington's defense.
I would just say it this way. Julian Saint, Ohio State is not putting too much on him to win games. They're believing, and game manager becomes this stupid sort of thing. Ohio State's approach is that we are a physically dominant team and we don't have to put too much on our quarterback yet because he's young and just getting experience. Maryland is not going to have that approach at all. Maryland is going to be a team that's our quarterback is the most gifted player on our team, and we have a good defense, and we're going to allow our quarterback to go out and make plays. Like that, it is going to be very different. Now, on the flip side of that does create some opportunities for Ryan Walters' defense that you weren't going to have against Ohio State, because Ohio State was so buttoned up in what they did. And you're going to have some opportunity. He is a freshman, a true freshman, who doesn't have a ton of experience. Can you confuse him on what he's seeing? Can you, there's just much more volatility in this that is going to be based on what the quarterback does and what the defense can either bait him or goad him into doing. More cat and mouse in this game, Christian.
Is it cat and mouse, or is it a chess match?
But there is, like, look, I think in general, I think Washington's defense played pretty well against Ohio State. I don't know how much that told us about how good Washington is, because I don't think Ohio State was that aggressive. This is going to be a game where I could see it going either way. I could see Malik Washington being able to make really big plays against Washington. I could also see Washington's defense, given what they're coming off of facing, having a lot of success in this game, even given the personnel that they're missing.
Malik Washington, as most quarterbacks are, far better when kept clean, per PFF. 65% completions when kept clean, for 7.9 yards per attempt. 7 of his 8 touchdowns and no interceptions. When he is pressured, he's only 11 for 28. That's 39.3%, for 7.1 yards per attempt, a touchdown, and a pick. Has not been pressured on the vast majority of his dropbacks so far. 8.6 average depth to target. So not forcing the ball downfield. His most frequent passing distance is 0 to 9 yards. But he's 10 for 19 with 5 of his touchdowns on throws of 20 plus. So he can throw the deep ball too.
Man, he can fling it. He's got a big arm and he will fire it. Yeah. On the flip side, Maryland's defense, which you pointed, they have yet to allow 20 points in a game. They've generated a ton of turnovers. Washington's offense, I think, clearly is the strength of this team. It's hard to know what to make, because there's been one, ESPN.com had a ranking of the quarterbacks this week, and I think Damon Williams, is 11th. He was, or maybe he's 9th. He's 9th. And I'll read the description here. The less fair way to look at Williams' performance this season. He has faced one good defense, Ohio State, and bombed the test, averaging 4.2 yards per drop back with as many sacks, 6, as points scored. The fairer way, Ohio State's defense is going to do that to just about anyone, and he has torched everyone else. He is still top 10 in total QBR after all, and that's opponent adjusted. don't think the comparison, or that saying Damon Williams, they only scored 6 points against Ohio State, does not give you a good referendum on how Damon Williams played, because I thought he played really well in the game. He was extremely accurate on the throws that he did make. He did not take chances. Even given, and Ohio State clearly was using sort of the mush rush approach of, they did not want him scrambling. They did not have guys trying to collapse the pocket and flush him. They wanted to have a controlled rush that gradually constricted the pocket, as opposed to having guys trying to make moves and flushing Williams from the pocket.
Not everybody's got an Arvell Reese at linebacker either.
That guy is so freaking fast.
What a stud.
Absolutely unbelievable physical skill set.
Like, there were plays where the look from up above told you, oh, he should scramble. And he would. And, oh, okay. That's what Ohio State's defense looks like, collapsing on a scrambling quarterback, a really fast scrambling quarterback. Like, there were plays where it didn't look like this guy should have the angle on him, should be able to get him. And man, those gaps just close right away. So, Maryland's got some athletes defensively. Nobody else Washington's going to play. Maybe Oregon has what Ohio State has defensively. So, but I didn't think they could crib some of the lessons, right, in terms of how they spied him. And you mentioned the mush rush, right? Don't get too far upfield. Don't give him those lanes to take off from. Maryland tied for second in FBS and interceptions, and I believe tied for sixth in sacks. And they've already had a bye too. So putting up pretty crazy numbers. Before we get people too concerned about Maryland, let's give IP the chance to pour some sunshine on us with his take from the Ohio State game.
Good morning, guys. I've kind of become a downer on this podcast because I've just been skeptical through the first 3 wins. And I'm sure this is going to come up before you play my weekly rant, but I walk away with an odd sense of relief after that loss on Saturday. Now, I mean, I don't like traveling to go see Washington lose. And I guess I tend to travel for bigger games, but I don't think Washington's record is very good when I travel to see them, now that I think about it. But regardless, I finally know who they are. They're better than last year's team. They're certainly not at the level of the 2023 team, but they're more cohesive. This is very much a Jedfish team and not a kit of parts. That it felt like many games last year. And yeah, they lost, but they played okay. That fake field goal was something, but it overall went okay. So I'll just ask the direct question. What is the new range of record? Going into the season, like, if you would have said 10 wins, I would have said, wow, great. Yeah, maybe. If you would have said 3, I would have said, yeah, it's not out of the realm of possibility. But now I feel like the absolute floor is 7. The ceiling is probably 10. But they got a chance. They've got clearly 3 elite offensive weapons and a few more that could be pretty damn good. And the defense, it's okay. It's not good, but it's okay. So I'm curious. What's the new Ranger record? How are you guys feeling? And is that 7% chance that FPI is giving for Washington to make the playoff real? I'll take it. Go Dogs.
It's a very sunshiny prognostication. I feel that Ian is on the upper range. I'm not going to say I was encouraged, What I was grateful that the worst case scenario did not unfold. I had the fear that, okay, it's going to go out there and it's going to look like Penn State last year. And it didn't. So I'm grateful for that. I don't know if it increased my idea of the ceiling. I don't think it made me more likely to think that Washington will win 10 games.
No. And again, like, not to keep harping on it, but the injuries are a big piece of that.
Complicate that.
I think if they win this weekend, it's 9-3. If they win this weekend 9-3, anything worse than 9-3 is a major disappointment, because it will mean that they probably, and rarely goes according to chalk, I know, but if they go 8-4 after beating Maryland, it would likely mean that they did not beat Oregon, Michigan, or Illinois. And Illinois, hey, credit to them. Nice bounce back win over Lincoln Riley and his sleepy Trojans.
How about that? How about Lincoln Riley complaining about the schedule?
I know.
He's such a weenie. He's the biggest weenie in the conference.
How about Dan Lanning complaining about the schedule?
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, something about kickoff times or like team prep or whatever, which is a thing. Like, Washington fans certainly noticed right away that 5 of their Big Ten opponents have byes before they play them. One of them is Wisconsin, which Washington also has a bye before. But Oregon is second on that list in terms of their opponents having byes before facing them. So he's not wrong in that respect. But also, like, when the schedules came out, in terms of the actual like difficulty of the schedule, pretty much everybody agreed that it was pretty ideal for the Ducks. So I don't know that there's going to be a ton of sympathy for him on that end from his conference peers.
Big win for them, and I'll tell you what, that quarterback's good.
Yeah,
Dante Moore looked really good.
All those Husky fans hoping that the transition from Dylan Gabriel to Dante Moore meant
I'll raise my hand.
Off.
I've been saying for years they're due for a clunker of a transfer, and
yeah, he's not he came there as a transfer, but like not a true transfer, right? Because he spent last year with them as their like maybe that makes a difference. Like actually having a couple of years in the same scheme.
Yeah, he looks really good. It's funny, Lincoln's getting destroyed for not bleeding the clock more, which is one of the situations I don't think you can really criticize him for it, because they needed a touchdown. It's pretty fun. Like, you can't bleed the clock and score a touchdown. Like, that's not actually a thing. But it is funny. Like, that it looked like it got off to a good start. Their quarterback's really good, and then they blew that game.
It's amazing how many winnable games they've lost. It's like they never win when it's close late under Lincoln Riley.
Yeah, that's true. That's not just luck. That's not just poor luck.
Yeah, at a certain point, it's culture. Hey, what do you think, to answer Ian's question? I think it's 9-3. 9-3 is like, if you're worse than that, assuming a win this weekend, you're probably feeling like you left an opportunity or two on the table. But again, like we've said preseason, it depends on how those 4 losses come. I guess 3 losses from here on out would come.
If you ask me what I think the most likely record is now, I think it's 8-4, and that they win one of those 3 games that you're talking about: Illinois, Michigan, Oregon, and then they kick one, and maybe it's this weekend. That they don't. If they win this weekend, I still think 8-4 is the most likely result. I think they're more likely to finish with 7 wins than they are to finish with 10. Like, that's just, and that is based largely on schedule/injuries.
Speaking of the Trojans, what do we do with them in our weekly Pac-12 power rankings?
The power rankings have there is a very muddled middle. Oregon's at the top.
The middle's like everyone after Oregon now.
Yeah. Who do you have after Oregon?
I think Arizona State has earned it.
I put Arizona State number 2 as well. I don't feel great about it.
Their one loss is close.
Mm-hmm.
And you could keep USC there.
Look,
they lost by 2 points on the road to a team that a lot of people were talking up as a CFP, not even dark horse, because they were preseason top 15 team. And I like the blowout loss at Indiana changes it. I get it. And the nature of the loss by SC, that it felt like a coach screw up. But they deserve to be considered. We're just looking at it on paper.
You're right. They do deserve to be considered. Here's why you can't put them there. When the team that always does something loses because of the thing they always do, like you cannot keep them in place. You have to say this team still has the same Achilles heel of not being able to finish. And I'm not sure if it's because their coach is a weenie or because they wear flip-flops to class, but there's something that is fundamentally wrong with that team that they have not fixed yet, and they cannot be number 2. They can't stay in the same place.
I do have them third.
I have them third as well. Oregon, Arizona State, USC. Who do you have 4?
I think Washington is fair at 4.
Yeah,
I think
me
that
too.
I think the nature of Utah's loss at home to Texas Tech disqualifies them from that spot. So I have Washington 4 and Utah 5th.
I have Cal 5th.
Ooh, okay. I'm not quite ready to forgive Cal for
the San Diego State
the
shutout.
San Diego State game.
These things are going to happen when you have a true freshman quarterback, Christian.
Oh, you're going to get shut out by San Diego State?
Everybody, it was a brick. It was a brick. They happen. This occurs. You saw Michael Penix in week 3 put up a brick against Carolina. Came back this week. He was fine. I have Cal 5. I don't feel great about it. I'm being overly punitive to Utah, and I'm completely like diminishing a terrible loss by Cal.
Utah just beat West Virginia's ass on the road.
Yeah. I think that's because of the dumbass uniforms that West Virginia was wearing. Did you see those?
No, I didn't.
It was like muted Wyoming colors. It was like, Let's take Wyoming's colors and bleach them. It looked so gross. They looked like wet leaves. It was like, can we design uniforms that look like Oregon's basketball court?
I've got Cal 6th.
Okay.
The Falcons, by the way, for Penix's brick, were not playing San Diego State. So,
yeah, they were. Carolina's god awful.
Well, I don't know. Not quite the same.
Utah. I have Utah. So you have Cal 6th. I have Utah 6th. Who do you have 7? Arizona, Washington State, Colorado.
Arizona got handled by Iowa State.
Mm-hmm.
I think you got to go Wazoo.
Yeah, that was a good showing by the Cougs. I've got Arizona, then Washington State. I'm not willing to overlook the Idaho game yet, and the absolute dud in Denton, Texas, or wherever the hell it was.
That's fair. I think with Zeviak House playing quarterback, which let's hope he holds on to the job. I think he's made his case, but you never know. I just like their trajectory. I think they're on the right path at least, and the North Texas game doesn't feel like it has to define their season. So I give them the nod over Colorado, and then it's Stanford, and then Oregon State can continue to thank the UCLA Bruins for keeping them out of the basement. They should have beat Houston. My Oregon State still has life take. Was looking great Friday night.
Sure was.
They can't kick the ball.
No.
I mean, it's just incredible. I've never seen this at the major college football level. It's amazing.
It's time for them to have tryouts on campus.
Yeah, like they gotta find somebody. So, I still think they're going to win a couple games.
Do you have Washington State, Arizona, Colorado, then Stanford, or do you have Stanford ahead of Colorado?
I have Colorado, then Stanford.
Okay. Did you see that the Colorado got fined for the anti-Mormon chant?
I did. Did you see Deion Sanders' comment about it?
Don't indict us just based on a group of young kids that probably was intoxicated and high simultaneously.
He really doesn't like weed. He is not about it.
Which is really funny given the Colorado's history when it comes to legalization. But yeah. He doesn't. He's not a big fan of weed. And I was also like drunk and high simultaneously. Like that produces. Like I would think that like the weed, in my experience, has a mellowing effect and would make you less likely. That's the intoxication that would lead to the anti-religious slurs.
Yeah. Did you give any thought to moving UCLA out of the basement?
No, that team
Can't lose to Northwestern.
That
Come
team's
on.
going over. I don't see a win on their schedule.
They have. We talked about how they fired Ikaika Malloy.
Yep.
They also have agreed to part ways with their offensive coordinator since the result against Northwestern. So they've got Maryland at home, I want to say, which feels far less winnable than it did 4 weeks ago. That's like it. I mean, and I really would be shocked if they won that game. It would take a massive upset somewhere for them to not go 0-12.
I mean, they've still got 3 top 10 teams left on their schedule. Penn State, Indiana right now, which is 8, and Ohio State. That's brutal.
It is.
Maryland is probably their most winnable game. They have Michigan State, but at Michigan State, Maryland, and Nebraska, and all the rest should be just thumpings.
I think they'll get thumped by Nebraska, too.
Have you watched that quarterback play?
Yeah, some.
He is the most fun watch in college football. I've never. I'm trying to think of the last quarterback I've seen who is as just wild as he is, both in a positive and negative way.
The Mahomes, the embrace of the Mahomes persona is
the cosplay. Yeah,
it's a little strange.
It is strange. But just actually watching him play a game is a wild ride. And I'm not even saying that in this overall, because he makes some absolutely incredible plays, but it's unhinged play, in a very, very watchable way. But God, if he was the quarterback of your team, it would be absolutely maddening.
You can spread about Damon Williams Jr.'s proclivity for holding on to the football.
I think Damon plays great, and I think that this game was an awesome. He is always going to take a lot of sacks, but I attribute that to similar to early NFL career Russell Wilson in the same sort of thing. The benefits you get out of that outweigh any of the negatives, and it's much easier to do that in college football than it is in the NFL. He does hold on to the ball a long time, and he is going to take more sacks because of that. But the upsides to it, what I saw in this game was a team that made a demonstrated and held to its approach to not let him scramble, and he didn't panic. He didn't start doing dumb stuff. He didn't start forcing the ball. He continued to make throws. And yeah, they had problems in the red zone, but they moved the ball, and that offense was functional. So I come away from it. Everything I've seen from Damon this year makes me more encouraged about his overall trajectory as a quarterback. I think he's been great.
Yeah, don't underrate 0 interceptions in 4 games.
Yeah. What do you think of him?
Yeah, I think he's looked good. Jed Fish talked about maybe encouraging him to embrace the idea that incompletions are fine sometimes. I do think he's got that Russell Wilson, I can always make something happen. I'm not going to give up on the play. And more so I'm not going to give up on the pocket.
Mm-hmm.
His unwillingness to leave the pocket, I think long term is going to serve him well. But I do think there's some opportunities where you can kind of, you know how it goes when you're there in the stadium. You can kind of feel the crowd starting to oh, go, look, there's so much room there. And he's like a beat slow on seizing on that. And I think it's because he wants to throw the ball.
Yes.
He doesn't want to give up on his progression, and maybe he's not at a point in his career where he can go through that progression as quickly as he will a year from now, where he can move on to second and third read as quickly as he will as a junior or as a senior. So I think this was a good experience for him to see, like you said, what is an elite defense look like when it's not your first start, right?
Mm-hmm.
Certainly he saw a huge physical and athletic challenge against Oregon on the road last year. But, in terms of coming into a season being the guy and having a whole off season with a plan built around you and knowing what your weapons are and kind of having that chemistry with everybody around you. And then you're going to put together a plan of attack against a defense like Ohio State. And, I can't quite get on board with this. Like, oh, they moved it on them. They had no trouble moving it on them. Like, yes, they did. They averaged 4.4 yards per play and they got sacked 6 times, but that's the kind of game where you got to feel like 20 to 24 points gives you a chance to win, or at least be in it, because it's going to be low possession. It's going to be low scoring. And they weren't like crazy far from having a chance to be in that range. So, just like he didn't look intimidated. You're right. He didn't panic. He didn't look overmatched. He completed 14 straight passes at one point. He was 18 to 22. If he, maybe a year from now, he doesn't take 6 sacks in this game, he takes 3, and he either turns the other 3 into a minimal gain scrambling or just gets out of the pocket and throws it away and lives another down, and it changes the complexion a little bit.
Here would be the one question I still have about him. How accurate is he throwing on the run? They didn't do that a lot in this game. They didn't roll him out. And that is, throwing on the run accurately is one of the hardest things for a quarterback to do. And it is rare that a quarterback is able to be very accurate while throwing on the run. If he can do that, that would be the next iteration and the next level where, it would be really tough to stop an offense that he led if he is also able to throw accurately on the run. And maybe that's just not going to happen. But no, I agree with what you said. Saying that they moved the ball at will, certainly not true. But they were still an effective offense. And the worst case scenario in this game was that it looked like Penn State last year, where you're like, that offense just can't move the ball. And this wasn't that, because that is a really good defense. And it's not because Matt Patricia is the defensive coordinator, no matter how many announcers harp upon that fact.
Unrelated to DeMond, I do think there's a chance that at some point next season, no matter how their record plays out in 2025, that at some point next season, you're reflecting on the 2025 season and saying, you know what? I sure am glad that Dylan Robinson and Rylan Dillard-Allen and Desmond Roebuck and Raiden Vinesbright got the experience that they did. I leave John Mills out of that just because, I think he was so clearly started the season as one of their 5 best offensive linemen, whereas some of those guys, maybe not the receivers as much, but some of those guys are stepping into bigger roles because of injuries and whatnot, where, maybe there will be some growing pains at some point. Maybe there'll be some games where, you wish you could have had Takario Davis, or you wish you could have had Rashid Williams. But next year, you're glad that these freshmen got the experience that they did, because I think there's going to be a lot of true sophomores form the foundation for them offensively and defensively next year.
It certainly looks like they've got some dudes. Those 4 guys that you named, and certainly John Mills in that group, are true freshmen who absolutely, the way they move and the way they play, look like guys that are at a time when you should just be happy that they're able to run in the right direction, look like productive members of a college football team that could become absolute studs.
One guy I didn't name, true freshman edge rusher Devin Hyde, who has appeared in 3 games. I assume he's not going to redshirt. I don't know if he's quite to the rotation yet. Like with Durfee out, we'll see. Do they want to go much beyond that top 3? If they do, I think he's the next guy. And they're very excited about him too. So I don't know how many opportunities there'll be for him this season. Certainly, with Durfee out, he's going to have a chance to make a move, but he's somebody who I think as a sophomore next year, depending on kind of what their personnel looks like otherwise, because a bunch of those guys do have eligibility left, but he's somebody who I think could influence things from this class, who maybe you're not going to see on the field quite as much as Roebuck, Vinesbright, Mills, Dillard-Allen, Dylan Robinson, but I think the coaching staff also believes has a very bright future. Are you trying to? I know you're not going to the Maryland game. Are you trying to come out for Mariners at all? Slash, are you rooting for the Yankees so that you can watch Mariners playoff baseball potentially at Yankee Stadium in the ALCS?
It depends on how I feel today. As of last night, I enjoyed watching the Yankees blow that. I enjoyed watching the Yankees have the bases loaded in the bottom of the ninth and make 3 consecutive outs. So any convenience that would come from having the Mariners playing the Yankees here has outweighed by watching New York's heartbreak in real time. We'll see how I feel today, because really Red Sox Yankees in some ways is a no-lose situation, because I'm going to be happy that one of those entitled fan bases gets hit square in the nuts. And
you're close enough to Boston anyway.
Yeah, 4 hours.
Yeah.
The one thing is that, especially like Yankees tickets, like those playoff tickets are backbreakingly expensive to get.
That makes sense.
But yes, I am considering a move back to Seattle. Maybe the Rutgers game is Friday night. We'll see kind of how the schedule plays out. And then I haven't attended a World Series game, though I was at a World Series game. It just didn't end up getting played because I was at the earthquake game in 1989. I'd flown down from Oregon, and I had a chance to go a few years ago. The Cardinals and Red Sox were playing. I think it was 2014. I was in St. Louis, and I was like, no, I don't want to go to a World Series game I don't care about. So I can't imagine if the Mariners play in the World Series that I'm not going to be at one of those games.
There's a potential conflict, not with Huskies, but a potential well, I mean, there are some, but that's not what I'm referring to. A potential conflict with a World Series game that I'm not going to bring up yet, because this is the Seattle Mariners. We're not going to talk about the World Series.
That's probably the best way to look at it. Although the Etsy Witch is involved now, so maybe all bets are off.
Yeah. I've got a 6:25 a.m. Eastern time flight home on Sunday out of Dulles. I changed it so that I could get back in time for game 2, which was announced recently. It's going to be at 5 p.m. So didn't quite need to get back that early, but I still am glad that I am, because now if there's a delay, I got a little bit of cushion. So Huskies are favored by 6.5. Do you have a prediction before we take off here?
Yes. I think Washington is winning this game. I think they're winning it 38-34.
Wow. Shootout.
Yes.
I think.
What do you think?
I think it's going to be a little more of a defensive game. I've got Washington 27-24. I think Maryland covers. Like you said, I think Maryland's got every reason to think that it can win this game. I think that Malik Washington is going to make some plays. I think that this is the kind of game Washington wins this year that it loses last year. That you saw last week. They're not quite ready. They're closer, unquestionably, but not quite ready to beat the elite of the elite in the Big Ten. But I think this is the kind of game going on the road with all the challenges, Maryland off a bye, 2 weeks to prepare, East Coast, time zone, all that stuff. This is a 12:30 p.m. Pacific time body clock game. So at least you're not kicking at 9 a.m. I think it's the kind of game they lose last year and the kind of game they win this year. And you come away feeling like that is the difference. So the difference between last year and this year against a team like Ohio State was tangible, but made no impact in the standings. Mm-hmm. I think it will be tangible and will make an impact in the standings when they go to play an East Coast game this year.
Are you telling me that if Washington blocks a field goal attempt in this game, there won't be someone who runs off the bench, does a circle around an official, and comes back onto the bench drawing a foul in this game?
I'm telling you that if there is, it might be the head coach. I'm just...
Actually, man, I made it through this whole thing without ranting about that pin-headed official. That was some bullshit. Some absolute and utter bullshit.
The sideline interference call appeared to be ridiculous.
Absurd. And I don't even hate Jed for then going and getting the dumb personal foul for yelling at the official. It was so bad. I kind of am glad that he stuck up for himself that way. Plus, karmically, that resulted in the fumbled punt.
Yeah, that would...
Ball don't lie.
The fumbled punt covered for how bad that second penalty was. I just think you you turn third and manageable into third and long. You just gave away a possession against Ohio State.
It was dumb.
You can't do that.
Yeah, that's probably the correct answer. However, I understand. They needed to know. They needed to know that was terrible. And then the roughing the passer penalty was garbage too.
That was bad. It's one of those where it's like you don't know you don't know how the game goes after that. But Washington did not make enough plays in this game to make anybody think that like any one of those penalties like truly changed things. So at least that's how I see it. Thanks for listening anywhere. Thanks to those watching on YouTube, perhaps even a day early, ahead of its Thursday worldwide premiere. If you like the podcast, go ahead and rate it somewhere. Leave a review somewhere. Helps people find it. Helps spread the good word of Say Who Say Pod. Enjoy the Maryland game. And enjoy some playoff baseball this weekend as well in Seattle, whether you're taking it in person or watching it on television. And we will talk to you next week.
Nobody likes you. You are an outsider.
Hey, wait a second, though. Did we get a legend call this week?
I don't know, man. That was Kalen DeBoer at his best.
How about this? Kalen DeBoer is 7-0 against Steve Sarkisian, Dan Lanning, and Kirby Smart. Can you believe that?
I can. I've watched him coach in big games. Like that dude absolutely knows how to coach in big games.
Here comes Vandy. Suddenly a big game in its own right.
Yeah. Diego Pavia. Got to be careful of Diego Pavia. That was a big result for Kalen DeBoer and his Crimson Tide.
All right, now we're done. We'll see you next week.